Welcome to the new video of NeuroPhilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin *****, the weariness of control. Have you ever paused for a moment and realized how relentlessly tired you are? Not the kind of tired that fades with a good night's sleep, but a deeper, more insidious exhaustion, a silent weariness that seeps into your bones and lingers in your thoughts. It's the fatigue born from the constant pressure to perform, to maintain, to excel. From the moment you wake until the second your head finally hits the pillow, you are locked in a battle against time, against expectations, against others, and most painfully, against yourself. Each morning begins the same way, the alarm's harsh chirp yanking you from a dreamless sleep. And immediately your mind floods with to-dos. You must respond to emails, field messages, attend meetings, prepare meals, keep the house in order, stay in touch with friends, and above all, never show a hint of weakness. Okay. You pressure yourself to be more productive, to deliver flawless results, to project unwavering positivity. The mantra of modern life is effort, insistence, persistence. And so you launch into your day, fueled by coffee and willpower, bracing for the next demand. But no matter how tirelessly you row, you never seem to move forward. Relationships teeter on the edge because you force conversation when genuine connection feels distant. Projects stall because you cling to outdated routines that no longer fit your reality. Decisions loom like mountain peaks because you fear making a wrong move and losing control. And the more you grip life with clenched fists, the more it slips away like water sliding through your fingers. This exhaustion is not a mere inconvenience. It is a form of man-made suffering. It stems from an ingrained belief that control is the ultimate virtue, that if you can master every detail, you can master your life. From childhood, you learned that success is earned through relentless effort. Don't give up, they said. Those who want it, make it happen. Yet, in your deepest moments, you suspect that this message hides a fatal flaw, the illusion that you can outforce the currents of existence. As the hours pass, you notice signs of the toll this constant struggle takes. Your mind races even when you're supposed to be resting. Simple choices, what to eat, when to exercise, whom to call, become sources of stress. Nights blur into mornings with little rest in between. You find yourself replaying conversations, worrying about potential mistakes, or planning contingencies for every possible setback. Even leisure activities feel tainted. How can you truly relax if you're worried you could be doing something more valuable? Perhaps you feel a familiar ache in your chest, a tightening around your heart when you consider the path you're on. You glance at your reflection and see someone you barely recognize. Eyes shadowed by fatigue, shoulders hunched from carrying invisible weights. Inside, there's a small, persistent voice whispering, "There must be another way." But Louder voice of habit drowns it out. Keep pushing. Don't show any cracks. This pressure cooker environment breeds more than just tiredness. It cultivates anxiety, insecurity, and disconnection. You become so focused on controlling external circumstances that you lose touch with your own inner world. You forget what it feels like to live in alignment with your true self. You lose awareness of your body's needs for rest, your mind's need for space, and your spirit's need for authenticity. Every attempt to force clarity paradoxically plunges you deeper into confusion. You rush through decisions only to second-guess yourself later. You pack your calendar with activities intended to fix your life, but the busyness itself becomes the problem. You chase the next deadline, the next target, the next semblance of stability, unaware that you're running on a treadmill that only accelerates as you work harder. It's a cycle that feeds on itself. The more overwhelmed you feel, the more fiercely you compel yourself to solve it through sheer determination. But determination alone is not enough when the root of the issue is your relationship with control itself. You haven't simply become a victim of circumstance. You have become a victim of your own reaction to circumstance. In this relentless pattern, even moments of rest become another task to accomplish. Meditate, journal, exercise. Check, check, check. But true rest cannot be manufactured through effort. It arises spontaneously when you allow space for it. The realization that something fundamental is missing comes at a cost. A recognition that all your pushing, planning, and perfecting has in fact pushed you away from the natural flow of existence, and that realization brings both discomfort and hope. Discomfort because it highlights how far you've strayed from balance and genuine well-being. Hope because it signals the potential for change, a doorway opening to a different mode of being. When the walls of relentless effort begin to crack, you glimpse the possibility of a life lived with less strain, more ease, and deeper connection. You start to notice how life around you already moves in waves of its own rhythm. The sun rises and sets without your intervention. Seasons shift in cycles that no human hand can speed up or slow down. Birds migrate, rivers flow, trees grow without frantic exertion. And yet, these natural processes flourish. They thrive not through force, but through a harmonious dance with underlying principles far grander than any personal ambition. This chapter of your life may be titled The Weariness of Control, but it need not conclude in despair. Instead, it sets the stage for a transformation, an invitation to step off the treadmill of ceaseless striving, and to rediscover the wisdom that lies in allowing life to unfold. It calls you to recognize the silent exhaustion that arises from forcing outcomes and to honor the deeper truth that ease and effortlessness can coexist with purpose and responsibility by naming this fatigue, by acknowledging how deeply it has seeped into your being. You take the first courageous step toward something new. You create the space to question old assumptions and perhaps to let go of them. You begin to wonder, what would happen if you stopped rowing so hard against the current? What if you learned to float, to ride the natural waves of your lives? River, instead of exhausting yourself in a battle you cannot win, in the chapters ahead, you will explore that possibility. You will learn about an ancient principle that reframes the very notion of action, showing you how to move not with brute force, but with a kind of informed, effortless grace. You will discover that true strength lies not in dominating life, but in participating with its innate intelligence. And you will be guided toward a way of living that meets the exhaustion of control with the quiet power of non-forcing. For now, rest in the awareness that you are not alone in this struggle. The weariness you feel is a universal signpost pointing to something larger. By noticing it, naming it too, have already begun to shift. You have taken the first breath of a journey toward a life that feels lighter, truer, and more aligned with the rhythms of your own heart. Embracing effortless action. When you catch yourself gripping life so tightly that your knuckles whiten, it's time to consider a different approach. Wu Wei. The Taoist principle, often translated as acting without forcing, may sound paradoxical. How can action be effective if it isn't driven by effort? Yet this ancient wisdom offers a radical alternative to the frantic struggle that so many of us mistake for purposeful living. In embracing Wu Wei, you shift from battling life's currents to moving in harmony with them like a leaf carried by a gentle breeze. Okay, not torn by the winds. Consider the dancer completely absorbed in music. Okay, she does not force her body to hit rigid positions. Instead, she feels the rhythm and allows her movements to arise naturally. Each gesture flows seamlessly into the next, guided by the melody's subtle shifts. There is neither hesitation nor tension, only an intuitive response to the beat. In that state, her performance transcends technique. It becomes an expression of oneness with the music. So too in life, when you respond to situations with awareness rather than brute strength, your actions gain a fluid, almost effortless quality. Or imagine a surfer lying on his board, eyes fixed on the horizon. He watches the swell, reading its shape, its speed, its silent invitation. He does not paddle desperately against the waves, trying to conquer the ocean's power. Instead, he waits until the right moment, then paddles in sync with the motion, allowing the wave to lift and carry him forward. In that moment of alignment, he experiences a sublime collaboration between his body and nature. His success lies not in dominance, but in attunement. Life, like the sea, has its own momentum. Learning to read its cues and move accordingly is the essence of Wu Wei. But Wu Wei is not about passivity. Far from it. It demands profound awareness and courage. It asks you to observe life's patterns, when to act, when to pause, when to speak, when to listen, when to pursue, when to let go. It asks you to cultivate a deep sensitivity to context, to trust your intuition as much as your intellect. In practice, this might mean resisting the urge to force a solution that feels wrong, even if it appears logical on paper. It might mean setting aside a productive timeline in favor of an inspired idea that arrives unexpectedly. It might mean saying no to a project whose risks outweigh its benefits. Even though telling yourself yes seems safer, in daily life, you can begin applying Wu Wei through simple experiments. Next time you feel overwhelmed by a task, pause and take a few mindful breaths. Notice the tension in your body, the shallow breath, the clenched jaw, the racing heart. Then ask yourself, what small adjustment could restore ease? Perhaps it's stepping away for a moment, or asking for help, or reframing the goal. Rather than pushing blindly ahead, you choose a more graceful course. Over time, these small acts of non-forcing accumulate, rewiring your default response from fight to flow. Another powerful exercise is to revisit a recent moment when you tried too hard. Recall the scenario in vivid detail, the physical sensations, the inner dialogue, the result that fell short of your hopes. Imagine approaching that same challenge. With Wu Wei, what would you do differently? How might you begin by noticing rather than reacting? How might you hold intentions lightly, trusting that the right path will reveal itself in its own time? Envision the calm confidence of someone who does not need to control every variable, who instead leverages timing, relationships, and emerging opportunities. On a deeper level, embracing Wu Wei asks you to question core beliefs about effort and worth. From childhood, you were taught that achievement equals value, that the more you do, the more you are. But what if your true worth lies independent of your output? What if the quality of your being matters more than the quantity of your actions? When you release the compulsion to prove yourself through busyness, you light a spark of possibility. The possibility that your presence, your curiosity, and your openness to experience are enough to shape meaningful outcomes. To cultivate this shift, integrate moments of stillness into your routine. It could be 5 minutes of sitting with a cup of tea, listening to its warmth against your palms. Or it might be a short walk without headphones, noticing each footfall and the breeze on your skin. These pauses are not wasted moments. They are invitations to realign with your deeper rhythm. In those interludes, the mind unclenches creativity, blossoms, and solutions often arrive unbidden. Successful leaders, artists, and athletes frequently describe entering a flow state where action feels effortless and time seems elastic. They're tapping into the same principle as Wu Wei. When you stop overthinking and start responding from a state of relaxed focus, you access resources that are otherwise blocked by stress. Neuroscience now confirms that excessive effort activates the brain's stress circuits, whereas a calm, receptive mindset enhances problem solving and creativity. This modern research underscores what Taoist masters knew centuries ago: ease, not force, is the hallmark of true mastery. Yet, adopting Wu Wei is not a one-time switch. It's a lifelong dance between effort and ease. You will still face challenges that require determination and perseverance. Wu Wei does not absolve you of responsibility. It refines the way you engage with life's demands. It teaches you to discriminate between battles worth fighting and currents simply meant to be navigated. It invites you to release the myth of total control, so that your energy can be channeled with precision rather than dissipated through frantic struggle as you deepen your practice. You may notice that your relationships shift. Conversations flow more naturally when you aren't trying to steer them toward pre-planned outcomes. Collaborative projects thrive when participants feel free to contribute their strengths without coercion. Even conflict can transform by resisting the urge to dominate or defend. You create space for genuine understanding and creative resolution. Wu Wei honors the autonomy and timing of all involved rather than imposing a one-sided agenda. In moments of personal pursuit, writing a report, preparing a presentation, developing new skills, you can invite Wu Wei by setting clear intentions while remaining open to detours. Begin with a vision of what you hope to achieve. Then chart a flexible path that allows for feedback and adaptation. When obstacles arise, pause to listen. Is this an insurmountable barrier or a signal to try another route? By responding fluidly, you preserve momentum without burning out. Ultimately, embracing effortless action is about trusting life's intelligence as much as your own. It's acknowledging that, while you have agency, you do not operate in a vacuum. The web of relationships, events, and unseen influences that animates reality is far more complex and dynamic than any plan you devise. Wu Wei encourages humility, a recognition that wisdom often emerges from cooperation with these greater forces rather than their subjugation. So, let today mark your first conscious step toward acting without forcing. Notice where pushing feels habitual and explore options for softening. Experiment with pauses, with trust, with sensitivity to timing. Celebrate the small victories, a moment of calm under pressure, an unexpected insight that arises during quiet reflection, a relationship that deepens when you release the need to control its trajectory. By weaving Wu Wei into your life, you begin transcending the weariness of control. You discover the thrill of moving with life rather than against it, and you open yourself to a richer, more creative, and more sustainable way of being, one in which effort and ease coalesce into an elegant dance that carries you forward with grace. Roots in Taoism and Zen. To truly grasp the essence of Wu Wei, we must trace its lineage to two complementary traditions. Taoism, the ancient Chinese philosophy centered on living in harmony with the natural way, and Zen, the school of direct insight that emerged when Buddhism encountered Taoist thought. Though centuries and continents separate our modern world from these origins, their wisdom remains remarkably fresh, offering precise guidance for our frantic lives. The Tao, often rendered Tao, meaning way or path, arises from the earliest layers of Chinese thought. In the 6th century BCE, Laozi, whose very name means old master, penned the Tao Te Ching, deceptively brief text that resists conventional interpretation. Laozi warns that the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao, signaling that the way eludes conceptual capture. Wind or water, it can only be felt, observed, and embodied. The Tao underlies every phenomenon, the growth of trees, the dance of seasons, or the rise and fall of empires, and the rhythm of your own breath. It operates through natural intelligence and organizing principle that unfolds without coercion or design. At its heart, Taoism teaches that nature always knows best. A tree erects its trunk without an architect. Rivers carve valleys without a blueprint. Human beings, born into this ecosystem, possess the same potential for effortless living. Yet, the moment intellect divides life into good and bad, win and lose, we erect barriers between ourselves and the Tao. We begin to force our will, to impose rigid structures, to micromanage every detail actions that inevitably generate friction and suffering. When your mind resists the Tao's flow, it collides with reality, creating wasteful energy and persistent disquiet. To counteract this tendency, Laozi offers a remedy both simple and profound. Wu Waction without forcing. He writes, under heaven, nothing is more soft and yielding than water. Yet, for attacking the solid and strong, nothing can surpass it. By yielding, water overcomes. By accommodating, it prevails. In practice, Wu Wei invites you to tune into life's currents and to align your inner intention with them rather than force outcomes through sheer willpower. It suggests acting at the right moment, in the right way, and with the right attitude. Much like the water that finds its path by responding to the contours of the earth. Zen Buddhism, which took root in China during the Tang Dynasty's 7th–10th centuries CE, deepened this emphasis on direct experience. When Bodhidharma, the Indian monk credited with founding Chinese Zen, arrived in China, he encountered a culture steeped in Taoist sensibility. Over centuries, Chan synthesized Buddhism's liberating insight into emptiness with Taoist appreciation for spontaneity. The result was Zen, a tradition that dispenses with elaborate rituals and doctrinal study in favor of direct, unmediated contact with reality. Zen masters often use consparadoxical anecdotes or questions to jolt the student beyond intellectual analysis into experiential knowing. A famous example is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? The point is not to produce a rational answer, but to exhaust the discursive mind so that a more immediate form of awareness emerges. Zen thus teaches that true understanding arises not from concepts, but from embodied presence, state in which you perceive the world without interference from preconceptions, fears, or desires. Both Taoism and Zen disrupt the conventional belief that consciousness must dominate matter. Instead, they invite you to cultivate receptivity, to observe, to listen, to sense the subtle intimations of your environment. Through practices like mindful breathing, seated meditation, and simple, focused actions, washing dishes, walking, tea, ceremony, you learn to quiet the inner dialogue that perpetuates anxiety and to dwell in the fluid space where life unfolds spontaneously. In Taoist terms, this space is the uncarved block pu, the original, undifferentiated state of pure potential. The uncarved block is free of judgments and artificial distinctions. It embodies the Tao simplicity. By returning to this uncarved state, by dropping the endless mental chatter and comparing, you find that creativity, wisdom, and harmony flow naturally. In Zen, a parallel concept is beginner's mind shoshin, the attitude of openness and curiosity that we possess as children. Before the world trains us to categorize and control, consider the metaphor of traveling down a river in a canoe. A novice grips the paddle so tightly that every ripple jolts her. Every branch skims the gunwale, filling her with alarm. She reacts to each obstacle, fights currents, and exhausts herself in tension. A seasoned paddler, by contrast, holds the paddle with a relaxed grip. She reads the water, adapts her strokes, and flows around rocks. She remains alert, yet unstrained, allowing the river's intelligence to inform her actions. In that state, progression requires far less exertion. The journey feels effortless, though it demands constant attention and flexibility. Historically, sages practiced Wu Wei not by renouncing worldly life, but by infusing every activity with this responsive awareness. A farmer plants seeds at the appropriate season, tending the soil but trusting nature's cycles to nurture growth. A craftsman shapes wood with patient, intuitive strokes, attuned to the grain. A leader governs with minimal interference, setting clear conditions while allowing people to operate autonomously. In each case, mastery is not measured by control, but by the quality of relationship between actor and environment. For our modern context, this ancient wisdom remains remarkably relevant. Neuroscientific research on flow states, periods of deep immersion in an activity mirrors the qualities described by Taoism and Zen centuries ago. When individuals report peak performance, they describe a sense of effortlessness, a blurring of self and task, and a heightened clarity of perception. Brain scans confirm that during flow, activity in the prefrontal cortex associated with self-critical reflection diminishes, allowing intuitive processes to guide action. Translating these principles from philosophical texts into daily practice requires intention and patience. Begin by observing your habitual patterns of resistance, the moments when you push too hard, when you control outcomes, when you cling to perfection. Notice how these strategies backfire, amplifying stress and depleting energy. Then experiment with small shifts. Instead of driving through rush hour traffic with clenched hands and furrowed brows, try relaxing your grip and breathing more deeply. Instead of rehearsing the perfect email response, draft a sincere message and send it. Instead of compulsively checking notifications, give yourself predetermined intervals for digital engagement. In meditation, notice how each inhalation and exhalation flows naturally without effort. Let that embodied ease remind you that being comes before doing, and that your capacity for action thrives when your body and mind are not at war. Over time, these micro-practices aggregate, rewiring your default responses. You begin to approach challenges with a greater sense of playfulness, curiosity, and trust. You become adept at shifting gears between focus and relaxation, between intention and surrender. While the intellectual allure of Wu Wei may initially seem straightforward, The real discipline lies in integrating it into the full spectrum of life's demands. It does not advocate cloistered withdrawal or irresponsible apathy. Instead, it calls for engaged participation, a courageous willingness to act when necessary and to yield when appropriate. It is a both-and rather than an either-or. You honor your commitments while honoring life's inherent intelligence as you delve deeper into Taoism and Zen. You may find that the boundaries between practice and daily living blur. The simplicity of a walking meditation becomes indistinguishable from the act of walking to a meeting. The awareness cultivated in seated meditation informs your conversations, your decisions, and your creative projects. In every moment, you learn to distinguish between necessary exertion and needless effort, responding with greater efficiency and grace. By rediscovering the roots of Wu Wei, you reconnect with a lineage of wisdom that spans millennia, unbroken thread of insight about how to live well. You see that effortless action is not a luxury, but a fundamental key to thriving. And you begin to taste the profound serenity that arises when control gives way to harmony. In the next chapter, we will meet the remarkable figure who brought these teachings into modern consciousness, Alan Watts, whose eloquence and insight helped bridge East and West, guiding countless seekers to experience the living pulse of the Tao. Prepare to explore how Watts reframed this ancient path for our era, making its quiet power accessible to a new generation. Alan Watts bridged between East and West when the ideas of Taoism and Zen first reached Western shores. They landed like seeds on rocky ground, unfamiliar, exotic, and often dismissed as mere curiosities. Yet in the mid-20th century, a single figure emerged who could translate these ancient teachings into the language of modern life. That figure was Alan Watts, an English philosopher, writer, and speaker whose gift lay not only in scholarship, but in the art of storytelling. Through his lectures and books, Watts became a living bridge between East and West, guiding countless seekers toward a deeper experience of Wu Wei and the Way. Born in 1915 in Kent, England, Alan Wilson Watts displayed a keen interest in Eastern thought from a young age. While still in his teens, he devoured texts on Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism, fascinated by their visions of reality as a fluid, interconnected whole. After moving to the United States in 1938, he studied Zen Buddhism intensely, eventually becoming a priest in the Saint Zen tradition. Yet Watts grew increasingly aware of the obstacles posed by rigid religious frameworks, even those transplanted from Asia into Western soil. He recognized that the true essence of these philosophies lay not in dogma or ritual, but in direct, playful engagement with life's mysteries. Watts set out to create a new form of exposition, one that combined intellectual clarity with metaphor, humor, and a conversational tone. He rejected the arid academic style common in scholarly works, preferring instead to speak as if he were sharing stories around a campfire. His lectures, often recorded on vinyl or broadcast over public radio, drew enthusiastic audiences who were hungry for alternative perspectives on existence. Through his resonance and charisma, Watts made Taoist and Zen principles feel less like distant abstractions and more like practical tools for navigating the complexities of 20th century. Life. Central to Watts's teaching was the metaphor of life as music. Rather than treating existence as a problem to solve, he invited his listeners to experience it as a dance. The point of music, he said, is not to arrive at a point beyond the music. Similarly, the point of living is not to reach an imaginary finish line, but to participate fully in the unfolding rhythm of each moment. This metaphor resonated deeply with those trapped in the grind of conformist culture, people who believed they must continually push, aspire, and accomplish in order to justify their existence. Watts reminded them that life's true vitality emerges when we join the melody rather than force it. Watts also popularized the concept of non-duality, a cornerstone of Eastern spirituality that challenges the Western tendency to divide reality into subject and object, self and other. He often used the analogy of the ocean and its waves. You are not merely the wave you ride. You are the ocean itself. When you cling to the wave's transient shape, its crest and trough, you ignore the vast underlying reality that gives rise to it. Through this lens, the anxieties born of egoic separation dissolve, opening space for compassion, creativity, and a profound sense of belonging. Perhaps Watts's most enduring gift was his ability to deconstruct mental barriers with disarming wit. He would pose questions like, if you wake up one morning and find the world entirely different, would you still call it a world? Such provocations jolted audiences out of habitual thought patterns, encouraging them to question the assumptions that sustain their struggles. In doing so, he exhibited a feature of Wu Wei itself by letting go of rigid expectations and mental constructs. One makes room for fresh insight. Watts did not hand out solutions. He invited people into a living experiment of awareness. Despite his deep engagement with spiritual traditions, Watts was no ascetic. He relished life's pleasures: jazz music, fine wine, and spirited conversation. This balanced approach underscored his conviction that enlightenment need not mean renunciation. He admired the Taoist sage who partakes in the world with zest, not out of attachment, but out of an open-hearted recognition of life's inherent wonder. In his view, the dancer must relish the music, and the surfer must delight in the wave. Attachment does not preclude delight. Watts's influence rippled far beyond academic or spiritual circles. In the 1960s, his ideas helped to ignite the countercultural movement, inspiring musicians, artists, and social activists to explore alternative modes of living. The ethos of peace, love, and non-violence that defined the era found philosophical backing in his words. Yet he never aligned himself uncritically with any movement. He cautioned against idolizing gurus or creating new dogmas, warning that the modern mind's hunger for certainty can even distort the very teachings meant to free us. One of Watts's most accessible works, The Way of Zen, published in 1957, offered Western readers a lucid introduction to Zen's history, core practices, and underlying philosophy. Rather than presenting Zen as an aloof mysticism, he showed how its fundamental insights apply to everyday life, how mindful breathing can steady an anxious mind, how the practice of just sitting can illuminate the habitual patterns that obscure reality, and how acceptance of impermanence can dissolve the fear of change. Through clear anecdotes and evocative language, he invited readers to experiment with Zen in their own experience. In Tao, the Watercourse Way, a posthumously published collaboration with his friend Al Chungyang Wang, Watts explored the Taoist vision of life as an effortless flow. Drawing on Laozi's verses, he elucidated how the principle of non-action does not mean passivity, but rather a dynamic, creative responsiveness to each situation. He wrote of leaders who govern by guiding, of artists who create by channeling inspiration, and of individuals who live with deep trust in life's unfolding. Through this work, he offered a template for integrating Wu Wei into the full spectrum of human endeavor politics, art, business, and personal development. Watts's lectures often ended with a gentle reverie rather than a tidy summary. He left room for silence, inviting listeners to rest in the spacious awareness that transcends words. This practice mirrored the Zen emphasis on direct experience, reminding us that the deepest truths lie not in concepts, but in the lived moment where subject and object dissolve. In his later years, Watts faced personal struggles with health and relationships, reminding us that teachers too are human. Yet even in adversity, he continued to exemplify Wu Wei by adapting gracefully to his circumstances. When conventional paths closed, he found new ways to communicate through radio interviews, television appearances, and ever-evolving lectures. His commitment to authenticity over reputation allowed him to share both triumphs and vulnerabilities, reinforcing the Zen principle that imperfection itself is perfection. Today, decades after his passing in 1973, Watts's work remains remarkably alive. His recorded talks circulate online, introducing new generations to the art of effortless action. The digital age, with its ceaseless stimulation and temptation toward control, makes his teachings more relevant than ever. When you feel yourself tightening in the grip of overwork or anxiety, you can return to Watts's voice as a guide back to fluidity and presence. Yet Alan Watts would likely caution against idolizing him. He would urge you to become your own authority. His role was that of a hand pointing toward the moon, useful in guiding your gaze, but not to be confused with the moon itself. The real work lies in your own experiment of Wu Wei, in noticing where you force, in practicing mindful responsiveness, and in discovering for yourself the freedom and creativity that arise when you align with life's natural flow. As this chapter closes, imagine Watts in a lecture hall, eyes dancing, voice warm and engaging, inviting you to dance with existence rather than wrestle it to the ground. Feel the invitation as a soft breeze stirring within you, beckoning you to let go, to trust, and to act with informed ease. In the next chapter, we will explore the practical applications of Wu Wei in our modern world. How to cultivate effortless action. amid daily demands and how to weave this principle into the tapestry of your own life's journey. Practicing Wu Wei in modern life, in our fast-paced world, where productivity is prized above presence. The principle of Wu Wei can feel counterintuitive. Yet, it offers precisely what modern life most lacks: a path to sustainable engagement and authentic fulfillment. To practice Wu Wei today is not to abandon responsibilities, but to transform the way we meet them, choosing mindful alignment over frantic effort. In this chapter, we will explore concrete strategies for weaving effortless action into daily routines, cultivating a resilient mindset that honors both personal well-being and purposeful accomplishment. 1. Begin with awareness. The foundation of Wu Wei is simple observation. Throughout your day, carve out moments to notice tension, clenched jaws, shallow breaths, or brisk, habit-driven movements. Set timers or visual cues, perhaps a sticky note on your computer to remind you to pause. When the prompt appears, close your eyes for 3 slow, deliberate breaths. Feel the inhale fill your lungs, and let the exhale release any residual tightness. This brief practice interrupts autopilot and reorients you toward conscious engagement. 2. Embrace the pause. In Western culture, pauses are often viewed as inefficiencies. Yet Wu Wei honors the pause as an essential act of intelligence. Before responding to an email or diving into a new task, ask yourself, what does this moment most require? Sometimes the answer is action. Other times, it is reflection. Intentionally inserting micro-poses, counting to 5, stretching your arms overhead, or simply gazing out the window, you invite clarity and creativity. Over time, these pauses cultivate a habit of responsiveness rather than reflexive reaction. 3. Prioritize quality over quantity. When we chase metrics, emails sent, meetings held, pages written, we risk sacrificing depth for breadth. Wu Wei encourages selective engagement. Identify 1 or 2 high-impact tasks each day and devote your full attention to them. Let less essential items sit patiently in your parking lot. List rather than scattering energy across dozens of low-value activities. By focusing on fewer commitments, you not only produce superior outcomes, but also reduce the mental clutter that fuels exhaustion. 4. Listen to natural rhythms. Every human body follows intrinsic cycles of energy. Morning alertness, midday lull, afternoon surge. Map your most demanding work onto your peak times, and schedule restorative tasks like creative brainstorming or light administrative work during transitional periods. Additionally, honor longer cycles. Respect the ebb of a busy season by scheduling recovery days or short retreats when stress accumulates. Attuning to these rhythms reflects Wu Wei's core tenet: taking action in harmony with natural flow. 5. Cultivate beginner's mind, a hallmark of Zen practice. Beginner's mind Shoshin is the attitude of openness, curiosity, and receptivity. Approach tasks no matter how familiar with fresh eyes, as if encountering them for the first time. In meetings, listen without preconceived judgments. When troubleshooting a problem, Welcome unconventional solutions. This mindset dissolves stale patterns and invites innovative breakthroughs. It also reduces the friction born of rigid expectations, enabling you to move with greater ease. 6. Practice tactical surrender. Surrender in Wu Wei is not defeat. It is strategic acceptance of what lies beyond your direct control. When a project deviates from plan, a key collaborator falls ill, market conditions resist the urge to double down on forceful fixes. Instead, acknowledge reality. This is where things stand. Then explore adaptive responses. Reprioritize objectives, delegate tasks, or adjust timelines. By releasing resistance, you conserve energy for creative problem solving and maintain composure in the face of uncertainty. 7. Integrate mindful movement practices, walking, yoga, Tai Chi provide embodied learning of Wu Wei. During a brief walk, notice each footfall and the rhythm of your breath. As you shift your weight, sense how your body naturally finds balance. This embodied awareness translates into more fluid posture, calmer presence, and reduced tension when you return to desk work. Even brief standing breaks, accompanied by simple stretches, can reset the nervous system and remind you of the body's innate wisdom. 8. Design. Flow-friendly environments, your physical surroundings profoundly impact your capacity for effortless action. Cluttered spaces breed mental clutter. Simplify your workspace by clearing non-essential items, organizing tools within easy reach, and personalizing your environment with elements that evoke calm, perhaps a small plant, a photo of nature, or soft, natural light. These subtle design choices reduce friction in daily tasks and serve as continual prompts to operate from a place of relaxed focus. 9. Use intentional language. Language shapes thought. Notice phrases that reinforce forceful striving. I have to, I must or I can't, and experiment with alternatives. I choose to, I'm beginning to, or I will explore. This slight shift fosters a sense of agency without the burden of compulsion. When delegating or collaborating, frame requests with clarity and flexibility. Could we explore this option? Rather than you need to do this now, such language honors others' autonomy and invites cooperative energy rather than resistance. 10. Cultivate gratitude and trust. At the heart of Wu Wei lies trust. Trust in life's unfolding. Trust in your own capacity to adapt, and trust in the interplay of visible and invisible support. Each evening, take a moment to acknowledge at least 3 things that unfolded well-planned or unplanned. This practice rewires your mind to notice positive currents and reinforces confidence that effort balanced with ease yields fulfilling results. Gratitude deepens your connection to the moment and to the abundance that naturally arises when you cease forcing outcomes. 11. Maintain vigilance. Against old patterns, the path of Wu Wei is ongoing. Even as you cultivate effortless action, old habits of over-control will re-emerge in times of stress. When you catch yourself defaulting to frantic busyness, pause and revisit the exercises above. Consider enlisting an accountability partner, someone who can gently remind you to pause, breathe, and realign. Journaling your experiences can also illuminate patterns. Note when non-forcing led to breakthroughs, and when forceful pushing resulted in diminishing returns. 12. Embrace. Technological discipline. Technology can either enhance flow or amplify distraction. Employ digital boundaries. Designate deep work blocks during which notifications are silenced. Use website blockers for time-draining sites. Schedule specific intervals for email and social media rather than allowing them to hijack your attention. By structuring your digital landscape, you create conditions for sustained focus and reduce the mental tug-of-war that fractures attention and depletes energy. 13. Lead by example. If you manage teams or projects, modeling Wu Wei can profoundly shift group dynamics. Begin meetings with a moment of silence or intentional breath. Frame agendas to allow flexibility and genuine dialogue. Celebrate not only outcomes, but also the process and collaboration that made them possible. When deadlines loom, proactively discuss workload and redistribute tasks rather than defaulting to martyrdom. A culture of effortless action cultivates engagement, creativity, and well-being across the organization. 14. Balance action with reflection, while Wu Wei emphasizes responsive action. It also honors reflection. Regularly step back to review your goals and strategies weekly, or monthly check-ins that assess not only what you've accomplished but how you experienced the process. Ask yourself, where did I act from a place of ease? Where did I push needlessly? What adjustments can I make? This reflective rhythm transforms sporadic insights into lasting behavioral shifts. 15. Make Wu Wei your compass. Ultimately, Wu Wei becomes less a set of techniques and more a guiding orientation, a compass for discerning when to act and when to yield. As you integrate these practices, you'll develop an intuitive sense of timing and effort. You'll begin to recognize that life's currents carry you to opportunities that brute force would never reveal. You'll find that by acting with informed ease, you not only achieve your objectives, but also cultivate a deeper sense of joy, resilience, and creative synergy in embracing Wu Wei within modern life. You honor both ancient wisdom and contemporary insight. You navigate complexity with fluid grace rather than rigid control. You release the exhaustion of striving and reclaim the vibrant aliveness that emerges when action and ease unite. As you move forward, remember, each moment is both a practice and a chance to dance more fully with the unfolding mystery of life.